Hi, welcome to the channel. If it is your first time here, my name is Chad and I teach folks how to improve their career while also improving the businesses they work using lean concepts, tools, and as well as some Six Sigma. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure you join my YouTube channel by just clicking that subscribe button below. It's free. Why not do it? Today, I'm going to be talking about 5 big, huge mistakes that Kaizen facilitators often make when they're preparing for and delivering a Kaizen event. Now, Kaizen seems to be all the rage these days because they make rapid improvements to a business, a process, and they can get rapid cost savings. They can eliminate a lot of muda or waste in a process, and they can do it really quickly, generally over 3 to 5 days with no follow-up actions. However, there are a few mistakes and pitfalls you need to watch out for if you're planning on facilitating a Kaizen event. These are 5 mistakes I have seen folks make. It's 5 mistakes that when I'm coaching folks on how to run Kaizens, I tell them to watch out for these. Inevitably, sometimes they will still make these mistakes, and then they come back and say, you know, you were right. I've been doing Kaizens for over 20 years, so I have learned what not to do as well as what to do to deliver a successful Kaizen. So let's get started. Now, the first Kaizen mistake that most facilitators will make is not having a sound problem statement. Oftentimes, we'll go into these Kaizen events and we'll just have some sort of high-level problem but not be specific on what the problem is. And I've talked about how to develop problem statements in other videos, so I won't cover that in this video. I'll post a link in the description below that will take you to a video that will help you out with that if you're having troubles with coming up with a problem statement, because they can be difficult to actually articulate. In fact, about 79% of your time should be spent on coming up with a sound problem statement that's agreed to by the team leader. Most folks want to jump right into the solutions, all right? They want to jump into the solutions, and they're often giving you symptoms, all right? I feel like this is happening. This is the situation. We experienced this. These are all symptoms that we would explain like to a doctor if we went to a doctor. You know, my nose is running, I have headaches, my stomach's upset, those types of things. So you want to make sure you're able as a facilitator to focus their attention on what's important through a series of questions. And I always focus on the who, what, when, where, how, and how many. Again, I know that was rather fast, but I have another video that focuses on that. Just know that you have to have a solid problem statement. Now, if you run into someone, and this has happened before, that feels like they know what the problem is. Hey, I already know what the problem is. Well, if they did know what the problem was, why didn't they solve it? But let's say they do say, I know what the problem is. Then just ask them, hey, tell me what the problem is. And oftentimes they can somewhat articulate what the problem is, but then hand them a marker and say, okay, now I want you to go write that problem out on the board. And in a statement or in a paragraph. And often this is where it all falls apart. And this is because they don't really understand the problem fully. And you are a facilitator, so it's your job to coach them through that so that they understand how to properly facilitate or properly identify the problem. And that way, when you get into the event, you'll be able to focus on the solution to that problem. Now, the second mistake many Kaizen facilitators make is that they try to solve all the problems in one Kaizen event. Here's where we gotta really be facilitators before we even get into the event. We have to manage expectations. Listen, managers, VPs, executives, they all want you to solve their problems. They all want you to go in and solve every problem they have. And oftentimes, they'll send some folks out to Kaizen training, and when you come back, they're like, hey, now go solve my problems. While that can be done, you can't do all of those in a 1, 3 to 5 day event. If that was the case, I'd be a millionaire because I'd be doing that for all the companies in the entire world, and I would make a lot of money doing that. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But you can be very specific and solve very specific problems that are plaguing the organization rather quickly. And sometimes these are called rapid improvements. Altogether, it's Kaizen, right? What continuous improvement. That's what Kaizen's all about. Now, if you identify your problem statement correctly, then going in and solving that specific problem will be rather easy to do or easier to do. And so make sure that you are not trying to solve all the problems in the organization with one Kaizen event. Be very specific. The third mistake a lot of Kaizen facilitators make is that they feel like they have to have everyone in the event. Now, when I lead events and I coach folks on leading their own events, I always recommend having 5 to 8 people is really the sort of the sweet spot of team members. 7, 8 is about as many as you want to go. Once you go any more than that, you get too many opinions interjected. It really gets difficult to facilitate. Have I facilitated more than that? Yeah, I facilitated ones with 30 people before, okay? But I had to divide them up into teams, and there was multiple events happening at the same time. But that takes years of experience to do, and it's not something I recommend for the light of heart. You have to have a lot of experience pulling people together, controlling sort of different opinions, cultures, that kind of thing. So I would recommend when you're doing these events, always having 5 to 8 folks. 5 might be too little. Definitely 8 is about, 7 and 8 is about the sweet spot. You know, 10's fine too. Listen, you know, there's a plus or minus there. But certainly once you get around 12, 15 folks, it can be difficult to maintain the group and make sure we're focused on the right things. 7 to 8 is the happy spot, the sweet spot. So make sure you don't have large teams, because that's a pitfall. And make sure that you're using people from the process, people that actually work in the process, okay? And I'm not saying all 8 people have to be the folks that run the process, but certainly you want 1 or 2 folks from the process that actually run the process to help you solve the problem. That way you get their buy-in, you build that culture, that beliefs around that Kaizens work, and that will help you in promoting Kaizens and running future events. And the 4th mistake a lot of Kaizen facilitators make is that they forget about the Gemba. Now the Gemba means the actual place where the work's being done, right? The actual place where value is being created. And so Gimbal is a Japanese word, but that means that where the work's being done. And this is great for any type of operational process. Now, when it gets to transactional, I get it. It gets a little difficult, right? Like if it's finance, or if it's accounting, or if it's sales, legal even. I've run Kaizen events for legal. When this happens, then it gets, you don't get to touch and feel what's happening, because a lot of it is sort of a process, maybe done on a computer, transactional in nature. However, what I always like to do is I'll have the folks bring up their process that they do on the screen, show the team what they're doing, run through that process, and that is the Gimbal for transactional, right? You get to see what's happening. It's not as tangible in nature as, say, a plan or operational process, but certainly it's exactly what you would do if you're running a transactional process improvement or a transactional Kaizen. I do these all the time, and that's what we do. So don't forget about the Gemba. Get to the Gemba. Get to the place where the work's being done. And the 5th mistake that a lot of Kaizen facilitators make is that they don't have a charter. I don't understand why Kaizen facilitators don't have a charter. Listen, it helps you accomplish a lot of the things I've already talked about, the mistakes. So you get to scope the event in a Kaizen charter. You organize a team in a Kaizen charter. You have the problem statement in a Kaizen charter. You have deliverables, like what you want to accomplish at the end of the event, in a Kaizen charter. This is your contract, right? This is your contract, and I use it as a contract with the team. In fact, when you go into the event, a lot of times, you can get off track, right? Teams want to sort of, they start off on the right track, but then by, day 2 or 3, they start veering off, and you can always use that contract and say, listen, this is what we're focused on. And I always like to use the contract, the charter, if you will. I always like to use the charter each day, go over the charter again, so it refocuses the team. So if you're doing a 3 to 5 day event, each day start off with the charter. Make sure the team's focused on that charter, and then set the agenda based off of that charter. So make sure you're using a charter. Don't ever do a Kaizen event without having a charter. That charter is the contract between you, the facilitator, and the team leader who's asking for this event. And that way, at the end of the event, you want to make sure that you've accomplished what the deliverables are on the charter, and that specific problem that you had identified on the charter is solved. So that's 5 mistakes that I see a lot of Kaizen facilitators make when they're running their first events. Even some folks who have a few years of experience still do some of these same mistakes. They still make some of these same mistakes, and that's okay, right? We're all trying to get better. Part of what we do is continuous improvement. Part of improving ourselves, right, is continuous improvement, doing more events and getting more familiar with this. I'm always recommend getting a coach if you can, if you have one at your site that you can reach out to and speak to about your Kaizen if you don't have, if you've never ran an event before, or even if you have, I still bounce out ideas off of folks. So it's always good to do that. But I always recommend trying to have a coach if you don't have one. But if you don't have a coach, that's why you have this channel. Come back, ask me questions. I'm happy to help. I also have my email address down in the description below. Likewise, there is a link down below where you can get a Kaizen blueprint that lays out a lot of the steps in a Kaizen process, going from planning for a Kaizen all the way up through delivering the Kaizen. So make sure you grab that free resource down below. Listen, my name is Chad. Thanks for visiting this YouTube channel. Make sure you click that subscribe button as well as that thumbs up, because it helps me out with that YouTube algorithm. I'll see you all in the next video.